And I think I think the only one that I'm not seeing, I thought Jay or someone else. That's all. And I thought Jay was being on the. Are you guys ready? Let's get back together. It's been a while. I was just saying, I think everyone, we have all the different jurisdictions except for Warrington. And Henry had called and said he wasn't gonna be able to make it. He was gonna be out of town or out of the country one. But I thought Jay, I did speak to him and I thought he would be joining us, so possibly in a minute here. I'm gonna pass around a sign-up sheet. We'll get that going. I think everyone knows me. I'm Jeff Adams, Community Development Director for City of Cannon Beach. And then I put together an agenda for today, and we want to maybe go to the PowerPoint. And thought we would at least start off with welcome and introductions because it's been a while. And if you want to start, Don?
Sure. I'm Don Boone. I'm the county manager in Clatsop County.
Alyssa Gertler, Executive Director of Northwest Oregon Housing Authority.
Jared Kronofsky, VP of Ancillary and Support Services at Columbia Memorial.
Brandon Ogilvy, Cannon Beach City Council.
Trevor Ince, Board President of Northwest Housing Solutions.
Gail Henderson, Clatsop County Community Development.
Brent Estes, Department of Land Conservation and Development, North Coast Regional Representative.
Jeff Laurie, Community Development, Seabed.
Susan Penrod, Superintendent, Seaside School District.
Denise Laughlin, I'm the Director of Crest.
Robert St. Clair, Planner with Cannon Beach.
Right. Yeah, and so I think, Robert, can you go to the other one where you have the, share the screen, go to share screen and go just choose the, which one, you know. Well, anyhow, and so do you want to introduce?
Yeah, she's on the Zoom.
Yeah, so go, if you would just go to Zoom for now. Yeah.
Well, I can see you. This is Chad, City of Gearhart.
Oh, okay. Chad, any, who else do we have? We have Garrett, I think was on there. Or if you want.
I am Garrett Phillips from Crest.
All right, Garrett.
And I wanted to just introduce the Northwest Oregon Housing Authority hired a deputy director who just started, 2 weeks ago now. Her name is Shannon Callahan. She is on Zoom, so she's gonna be here and she's gonna be working on a lot of affordable housing, finance development, and once she's in town, she'll meet more of you in person. But Shannon, I don't know if you want to say hi on Zoom.
Hello, everyone. I look forward to working with all of you and meeting those of you I haven't already gotten a chance to, and joining you in person at the next Taskforce meeting.
And we have Chad Sweet.
Yeah, Chad already introduced.
And Amanda
Yeah,
Raffenchuk.
Amanda. Hey, Amanda.
Hi, Amanda Raffenchuk, Clatsop County Management Policy Analyst.
And we also have Nicole Bales.
Hey, Nicole.
Hello, with the historian.
Yeah, how you doing?
Good to see you.
All right, thanks. All right, so let's see, next slide, please. If it works. There you go. Okay. So I thought we'd go through like a regional review, just kind of catch back up from where we've been. And so if you want to go to the next slide. All right. So we've had 4 meetings so far. We started out with kind of a organizational meeting, talking about the problem statement of the needs in the area of affordable housing. And I think we all know that. I think one of the things I talked about in that meeting was really not having we didn't really need another needs analysis or plan on the shelf, because we all know the needs out there and we wanted to get together. And I think that was one of the reasons we wanted a task force and to try to gain a regional perspective on this. Second meeting in August, we talked about the mission, vision, and plans, and trying to get some lead us to that third meeting about organizational capacity and capacity building. We will continue to talk about today, but then the final one was on asset mapping, and we talked about, where and how do we want to grow as a region, and I think that's, the task that'll be before us in the next 4 meetings, which we'll talk about at the end. But next slide, please. And so some of the takeaways, if you want to. We started with kind of where we stood from our housing, the last housing analysis or housing strategy for Clatsop County that was done back in 2018, 2019. And we have that still up there kind of live to show, there's a lot of policies that we still need to, each one of our jurisdictions needs to work on. And to just kind of see that, bring those together and start talking, that give us a foundation from which to move forward on. Next slide, please. We also looked at different models and how that, if something like this, a project, kind of a rehab project in downtown Portland, if that were to happen in our communities, could we do those projects and maybe see what some of the red tape or the barriers that stand there? And then also, which we all like to talk about, it's not often just the policies that are out there, but it's also the communities and the education of those communities, and what's often called NIMBYism that's growing, and we're seeing pushback on all kinds of housing projects throughout the region. So next up. And so we also wanted to look at different models that are out there. And so I continually bring up the models in Colorado, Utah, those areas of mountain town communities, and show that, it takes commitments, this is stretching back to 1990 for this one, but there's programs out there that have been doing this for a number of years, and it takes that commitment over a long stretch of time. This showing in the dark colors how much percentage of their over the 5-year terms is towards deed restricted housing, and the rest is market rate, with that average line going through there, and what they project our goals are set for that moving forward. And next one. And then to look at the models locally and what we're doing well. And I think, this is from Clatsop County's dashboard, and they've taken that initiative to not only put together this so that we can see what we're doing, what's the pipeline, and how can we keep track of this going forward. But they've also taken the initiative to look at surplus lands and to offer, hey, if we want to make some land available, free up some lands, let's try to make some housing happen on the ground at the project level. And so next one. Then we had the hit that one more time. We had the North Coast Housing Summit, which was December 6th at Seaside Convention Center, which was a great opportunity for us as a coastal region to come together. And a lot of the same players, I think, that are at this Clatsop Regional Housing Task Force, we can see that this is taking place down in Lincoln, it's taking place in Tillamook, and also in other areas along the coast. A lot of similar challenges that they have, but also some of those solutions, and that's what they wanted to target at that. So if you'll hit the next slide there. Some of the things I took away from that meeting was the tax abatement over 30 years that's happening in the other areas, and something that we could look at, within Clatsop County and, you know, one of those policy issues that we could move forward, in the next few months. SDC deferrals was also another key component in many of those projects that were on display, or they spoke about shared equity modeling, so different models of how to go about this. I don't know if TJ's on today, but if he's not, I know we've had the conversation that he'll hopefully we'll start working with them more on this. And you know, they have different approaches down in Tillamook is on some of these instead of deed restrictions and other ways of financing projects and working on these clawback provisions. Code audit for impediments. So what Lincoln City talked about was, you know, they took a serious look at what their policies that were in place, their zoning ordinances and things like that, and said, hey, what are the impediments to get these projects done? And so continually to work on that is a key issue. I think that I kept hearing throughout that discussion. And then the partnerships and outreach and changing those perceptions, which we talked about the NIMBYism and some of the pushback around affordable housing and workforce housing. And then a term that, you know, is near and dear to my heart, naturally occurring affordable housing, as if you've got like binoculars and say, hey, look, there's some naturally occurring affordable housing over there. And, you know, that, but, you know, that term just, it shook me that I think it was the fellow from the state, his presentation that talked about that. And it shook me as to say that, you know, we have to actually have a term called naturally occurring affordable housing for something that somebody can actually afford, you know, that it does occur. You know, I don't think in our market, in our coastal market, that can happen anymore. And so that's what I think we're here today to talk about, and will keep us bringing us together to try to solve these problems. So next up, so these are the projects just in reading the papers over the last month or so. These are the projects that are happening. And I know Don's one that wants to always say, hey, there's projects being done. We're working and you know, there are solutions out there. So Alyssa, would you like to comment on any of these? Because I mean, a lot of these are, you know, I mean, they've happened since you started. I mean, a lot of these, or at least, you know, they may have begun, but they're starting to come into play. So I wanted to kind of go around and each of us talk at this point, at least to kind of catch the others up on some of these projects. And one other thing that's happened is, I don't know. I was going to bring it up at some point, but anyhow, so go ahead. Let's see. You want to?
How do you follow that, you guys?
Ignore it. I love Jet. I thought Jay would be here. He would really appreciate it.
Jay would totally. Actually, I love seeing this slide because I think this is the first time I've actually seen like the housing pipeline slide in this way. And I think part of what we've all been doing by coming to this meeting is trying to get our hands around like the development pipeline. I think, you know, most of you know that's why I've come to town, is just to try to facilitate the development of unnaturally occurring affordable housing. You know, the kind that, you know, has public subsidy in it to keep the rents low for people who can't afford to pay it, more or less.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, it's a really interesting question about affordable housing here, because what does it mean for people to be able to afford to pay their rent? I mean, that means a lot of things across a lot of income levels, and it touches a lot of people. And so do these projects, is what I'm noticing, right? And so you think about, so the other thing I notice about this is it shows how we are not in this alone. Like, yeah, there's housing authority projects on here, but I have partnerships in every one of these with the county, the city that it's in, Clatsop Community Action, Clatsop Behavioral Health, whoever it might be, CMH maybe one day. And so to me, this is like a really good example of like, we're all in this together, and wouldn't it be great if we could keep adding things to this and then checking them off and being like 40 units here, 30 units here. So this is just really encouraging, and I think this is something we could keep working on together and keep Like, this is a great way to build capacity together for what we're doing. So I'll just say Copeland Commons, I think most of you know, that one's sponsored by the First Presbyterian Church in Astoria. It's a great building right in downtown. Hopefully, the housing authority is not involved in that, but we are very supportive of our partners to try to make that happen. The Owens Adair expansion, that is the housing authority's project. Last night, we got approval from the City of Astoria Historic Landmarks Commission, which was a thing. And so that's exciting. That'll be 50 units in downtown Astoria for seniors, disabled people, and 13 permanent supportive housing. So our first foray into housing people coming out of homelessness, which is a pretty big deal. Heritage Square, I have nothing to say about that. I look down upon it from my house.
That's.
Anyone?
Not, don't see anything happening on that project.
Yeah, I put that lower on the pipeline right now. Yeah, that's
So it is though, I mean, there has been proposals or.
Yeah, so that was the City of Astoria's ownership of the former Safeway building in downtown Astoria.
Right.
And the city council's I would say last year, their focus to try and find a public-private partnership for development of that site. I'll tell you that site is so challenged. If you go look at, and I'm saying challenged, not just from a built environment standpoint, from a public policy standpoint, when the city acquired that property in the early 2000s, there has been community debate where sentiment has been 50-50 since that point in time, where half the community wants it to remain open space, the other half wants to see something happen there. That has not changed in 20 some odd years.
Yeah.
And so it's the city council, after the community outcry and the mayor and two of the councilors knew they were not going to run for re-election, knew that if they went forward with it, it was just gonna be a battle to be able to continue. They backed away from the project and now there's no proposal.
Oh, okay.
Happening.
Yeah, because I'd read that Laura Jackson had been at one of our meetings or whatever, had a new proposal for that site. So I didn't know.
Her proposal was for the county site, which is
Oh, okay.
9th and Duane.
Oh, okay, so that's a different site.
Yeah.
Okay.
all your land could be added to this pipeline at some point.
Yeah. And then North Post.
North Post is done by a private company, which is great, and you know, if you read the historian, you have seen the latest on that project, which hopefully it is moving forward now after some delays, but that looks like much needed workforce housing in a great location.
Is that Walt Postal?
That's Walt Postal.
Okay.
Yeah, other people may know more about that one. I'm just quickly.
Part of it's going to be short-term rental, part of it will be housing. The percentage of the two, it's Jeff and I were just talking about that zoning district permits hotels outright, as it does permit multifamily housing. So there's ability to have kind of flexibility between the two.
Yeah, interesting location in Astoria for both those things.
But construction is going on. I was out there the other day walking by and there are contractors putting siding on the buildings, so.
That'll be much needed. Brett, you might know more about the other ones.
Yeah, so Tongue Point multifamily, this is Carrie Johnson, a local home builder, has property over near the main entrance to the Job Corps facility. The issue over there is infrastructure. The city of Astoria has already provided a loan at 0 interest rate to Carrie in the tune of $100 and some odd thousand for infrastructure, and that is not going to cover the amount to be able to extend utilities to be able to serve that site. Sewer and water are both issues on that property. I know Business Oregon is involved as part of the regional solutions effort now to be looking about what can be done, because ultimately, I mean, that's the old naval base, which is out there, which has no public infrastructure in it. It's just the remnants of the old federal base, and there could be ultimately benefits for infrastructure improvements to the industrial development, which is happening over on the east side that Bob Dorn is associated with. So more to come on that front. On an interesting point, this is a kind of a very interesting, funny story to say how things have changed in Astoria over the years. The money that the city lent, approved a loan to Kerry Johnson as funds. They're referred to internally by the city as the DQ funds, the Dairy Queen funds, because back in the early 80s, things were so horribly bad economically that the city got a federal grant to help Dairy Queen remodel. And once those funds were paid back, they were cleansed of their federal dollars, and they were meant to be a revolving loan fund from there on out. But that shows how things have changed in Astoria from the 80s until now. So
Is that the one out by the high school?
yes.
It's one of the nicer.
That's a better funded DQ.
Uniontown is a project which Chester Trabuco is working on. It's directly west of the Portway Tavern. Part of the issues there is it's a cleanup site, a petroleum cleanup site from when there was a tank farm there. And so they're going through the process still with DEQ to get their letter of no further action. Ultimately, Mr. Trabuco has let the city of Astoria know that he will be asking for urban renewal funds. It's in the Astor West Urban Renewal District to be able to help pay for some of the infrastructure or maybe road improvement costs over there. And then Columbia Inn, maybe, I mean, I know just from that, and Don, you want to talk more about that? I mean, I know what I read in the newspaper.
Yeah, so we're coming down to the final diligence stages of the purchase process. And so, so far everything has been a green light and we're working through all the issues. There'll be some improvements that are required, working on the fire system and other things so that we can have more than 30 days in the facility. But it's all coming together. We have an operations plan that the state's looked at and is comfortable with. And so chances are, if I was a betting person, which I'm not, but if I was, I would say it's pretty positive that will move forward. So
Who will you be serving in that project?
So it'll be 50-ish beds. There's 22 units, but they think that there will be 50 beds. And the operators would be CCA and the Harbor as a partnership. And so, we're still working out the ongoing operational funding plan. We've had some conversations with the state about resources for some of the improvements, and I think that's going to work out. The operating dollars will be an ongoing issue. I mean, that'll be, we're going to be contributing, and they already have some existing funds, both the Harbor and CCA. So I think that will happen, and that's emergency shelter beds, fundamentally. So,
Which will be the first one in Clatsop County, other than the Harbor.
yeah, I mean, there's some, we have helping hands and other things, but yeah, I mean, it'll be a big addition for the county. And of course, we were turned down the first time, accepted the second time, so it's been a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you gonna talk about the Red Line project?
I can, yeah.
Yeah, you probably done it once.
So was it last month, the applicants, Care Oregon, came in and went to our planning commission to convert the Red Lion on Holiday just down the road here into, I believe it was 55 or 58 apartments. Couple of 1-bedrooms, mostly studios, with at least 35% of those units are gonna be for lower income affordability for their clients. They want to use the remaining to use as workforce housing for their networks employees. So they haven't applied for their change of occupancy for the building permit yet, but we've got them through the planning side of it.
Right.
So there's no zoning change at all? No. No, it's a conditionally permitted use in the zone, so they were able to just get a conditional use permit. Minor conditions, and then it's just dealing with the building code side of things, like Don said you gotta bring the fire and life safety stuff up to code for, long-term residential as opposed to short-term.
And then Trillium is.
Yeah, Trillium is one of the housing authorities project. It's in Warrenton, right behind the Home Depot. It's 42 units. We broke ground in June of 2022. It's gonna be open this June. We're in the starting to lease phase. If you looked at it, looks like a real building. It has, the siding is going on now. It's really coming along. I have nothing but great things to say about how the construction company built that efficiently, overcoming some of the barriers that we have around getting construction labor here in our area. They did the panelized construction where they basically built the stuff off-site and then just popped it up. Saved us time, saved us money, made the project go way faster. We have had all the supply chain issues, all the construction increase issues, developers been great. That's a partnership where CBH will have some units in that building as well as workforce low income housing.
How many units is it?
42. In one big 4-story building, basically. 1s, 2s, mostly. And actually, we are leasing, so if you know anybody who wants to like get on the list, go to the housing authority website.
You'll have any trouble.
Yeah, no, I don't think so either, but we really wanna, we wanna open with like everyone ready to move in, there's no reason to wait. Financially or because of the need. Okay, Chet, you're next, I think.
Chet?
All right, yeah, so the surplus land in Arch Cape are moving forward with really nice momentum. Submitted our expression of interest to the county on December 1st. We'll get our chance to go to a county work session just here next Wednesday, February 1st. Just pitching broad concepts at this point. Studios, 1 bedrooms, minimal impact on the forest, about 50 units is our goal. Probably more in the workforce and higher low income areas, maybe 60 to 100-ish, just based on needing a car to get to come and go from Arch Cape. Done a bunch of community outreach in the last couple of months, meetings with the local residents, meetings with businesses in Cannon Beach to sort of discover that need and have just a groundswell of support coming out of the community that's making it to the commissioners to counter the couple of NIMBYs that are, always making their voices heard, and we welcome that. We've met with all of them, we've walked the property with all the local residents, heard their concerns, done our best to address them. So excited to move forward, hopefully to the next step in this process, which John can tell you more about.
And so, there's been a lot of information out there that not all of it is necessarily always accurate, but not that I'm judging or anything, but just so everybody knows. So when there's a 4-step process that the county uses with the surplus property. And so the first step is just we get on one of these requests for expression of interest, RFEI. So we receive that, then that will go to the board. And so that's gonna be happening February 1st. If the board directs staff, then the board will then kick off a due diligence process, which in this case will involve ODOT, probably, certainly the county roads, community development, sheriff's office, transportation district, water district, fire district. It'll be a fully loaded, feasibility engagement, and we are looking at some outside resources to bring in to help facilitate this feasibility process. And so once that's done, there'll be a report that will go back to the board that hopefully addresses all of the different issues and hopefully will help the proposer be able to really, be a catalyst in moving it forward, and then also allow the board to know, is this really feasible or not? So this will be the true litmus test. That doesn't happen early. It happens once the board tells us, yes, that this is something that we want to spend time on. Because as I've always said, and I've said it here, is that the county has no housing staff, we have no housing department. And so we're doing this just to try to facilitate forward moving progress. And so, but it's, having come from Washington County, I can vouch for the extreme differences about how we all approach these things. But I think this will be a great process really for some of the connective tissue to be built about, from all the service providers, from NOAA, who's going to be actively involved, and figuring out how best we can manage these kinds of processes. So I'm excited about North Coast Housing Solutions being there next week. I'll give a little overview for everybody, but there are 4 steps. It's after the feasibility, you go into the board, then the board has really 3 choices. They can transfer the property with some conditions likely. They can not transfer the property and just keep it in the inventory, or they could choose to dispose of the property in another mechanism per the county's real estate policy. And so, meaning auction typically. And what I will say too, just because it's a little confusing for folks, is that these are properties that the county received in tax foreclosure. These are not properties the county bought. These are foreclosed properties. We routinely transfer properties between public agencies, and that helps public agencies. We've done it with City of Seaside, not just for housing, but for Parks and Rec. We've done it recently with City of Astoria, so that they can have what the land they need to replace one of their bridges up on Irving. We transferred two lots. That's just what we do. We try to help each other. It has to be for a public purpose. But transferring property is something that we feel like is part of our role to be relevant to our city partners. And we're trying to do the same thing with this others. Let's be relevant to this affordable housing issue, because other than that, we don't have a lot of cards to play. So we're gratified to be moving this conversation forward. It won't be quick and dirty, but it will be complete. So that's what
I can speak to the 4 that are not in Clatsop County, because those are all housing authority projects. And again, it just shows how whatever housing ecosystem is beyond one county, right? Which is something we think about a lot at the 3-county housing authority. So Northwest Oregon Housing Authority right now has about 275 apartments that we manage under our purview. So I'm telling you, we're adding 50 in Astoria, we're adding 42 in Trillium, but in St. Helens, that broadleaf arbor project is 239 apartments. So we are more than practically doubling the size of our portfolio with one project.
And 90% are set aside for Clatsop County residents. That's really awesome.
Yeah, and if just Sunset Empire will run a lot of stuff to that. We partner with a really sophisticated developer. We had a very big piece of land and we RFP'd it out to a developer, and we are partnering with Community Development Partners, who is a very sophisticated, affordable housing developer. We got tax credits from the state, we've sought investors, and it hasn't been quick and dirty, but it's a methodical process of affordable housing development. We've had great support from City of St. Helens, Columbia County, State of Oregon, so it's a huge project for us.
So, Alyssa, if I can just ask, from your experience.
Can I just interrupt for just a second? So we are short-staffed here today. So when you're ready to leave, just go ahead and leave. The door, I've locked it, so it's that automatic locking door. So if you did forget something and you locked yourself out, you can go across the street to the rec center and somebody can come let you back in. So anyway, sorry for interrupting.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Alyssa, I was gonna ask a question about, from your experience, from idea through completion of a project on the affordable side. I know that it varies, but there's some folks that think these are quick processes, and from my experience, they're multi-year projects and sometimes more than 3. Because just to get the financing aligned can sometimes take multiple cycles. And so you're literally waiting for the funding to align. And what you build is going to be informed by the funding sources. Right? So sometimes people say, well, we have an affordable housing crisis right now. How come you're not building today? And it's well, because every one of these projects requires public subsidy. And so public subsidy comes in all shapes and forms.
Right.
And it takes time to align those subsidies to get something done.
Exactly. We should have a whole other meeting on affordable housing funding realities. Because, most of you know enough to know, right? Donna's 100% spot on, right? If you want a federal fund, if you want a state fund, particularly the Oregon Housing and Community Services, the way they, as Don said, they have competitive funding rounds for the first time in years. Their tax credits have been oversubscribed, and so they're more competitive than they've ever been. You know, we work with developers like the ones we're working with on these projects who say, like, we need to do it exactly by this time to make it for the OHCS funding round for the tax credits. Assuming you get awarded the tax credits, your project it competes successfully, right? Meets all the goals that the state has outlined for those funds, which are, you know, multiple. Then you have to find an investor to purchase the tax credits, and that's a whole other thing. And I think Don is right. It's a complicated funding process. It's not just like, I'm gonna go get a mortgage at the bank. Because ultimately the equation in affordable housing is that the rents don't support the business, right? If you're a property manager and you're a landlord and you own an apartment building, basic model is your rents support your expenses. And when you're keeping rents at $300 a month or something, it's just never gonna work. So it's not the fast solution, but it is the long-term solution to affordable housing, is to subsidize rents for people who will never be able to afford it.
Well, and so some of those subsidies come from state, some can come from federal, some come from local,
Yeah.
some come from private. They can come from all these different sources, but these subsidies are very unique. It can be SDC waivers, it can be tax exemptions, it can be, you know, property discounts, it can be the tax credits themselves. I mean, there can be project vouchers. I mean, there's so many things that go into these projects to make them affordable, and it's because they have to have subsidy. I mean, that's the only way that these projects get done.
And that's why free land is really great.
And that's, it's goes, so some people say, well, how can the county possibly give land away for free? It's because if you really care about affordable housing, there's only so many levers, and it's a very competitive environment. And again, we hold very few cards at the local level, at least Clatsop County. And so land is one of the few things we do, and it's land that we received only because we're the county and we oversee the tax system and we get foreclosures. I mean, and so if we're gonna put a property into public use and have the public benefit from it, what better use of those lands? But that's just me.
That's just you, and
That's just me.
holding onto the reins of Clatsop County. That's all. Yeah, I mean, this is such a good point. So Broadleaf Arbor, huge project, also in the leasing stages. That one is not just a building, that one comes with this intergenerational programming. We're gonna have on-site case management. There's an organization called Engage that is actually gonna partner with the senior center, the school district, and there's gonna be all of this, there's a community room. So it's, you know, it's not just the building, it's the enrichment of the services and the access to other things that we can do there. And so that's why it's amazing. To your point about timing things for funding rounds, the Gable Park Apartments is one. I literally just sent a letter out yesterday awarding the developer, Northwest Housing Alternatives, who's doing Trillium House. We're gonna enter in a development agreement with them. Gable Park Apartments is 32 apartments in St. Helens with a triplex that we own next door. We think we can get like 50 to 70 units on it, but we're all about timing the funding round with OHCS to make sure we can get the right tax credits and that this project can compete successfully. And we know that there are other projects in St. Helens that are being done by other partners that are our potential competition. And you know, just putting it out there, you guys all have been following the Housing Authority longer than I have, because I just got here. Right, the Northwest Housing Authority is not always seen as the most competitive proposer, given our track record, despite the fact we have 5 or 6 projects in the pipeline. So we're trying to, you know, I keep saying we're building the plane and flying at the time, right? Like, we're trying to get better at what we do by building our capacity, but sometimes we don't score well at OHCS because we haven't always carried the ball across the finish line. So I'm just gonna own that in this room. Champion Park Apartments, 130 units in the city of Tillamook. I'm about to sign, I'm going from this meeting to sign all the papers for the closing. That is in partnership with a developer called Wish Camper, who does affordable housing all over Pacific Northwest. And they will again manage the property and take it from there. Holden Creek Village is also in city of Tillamook. That's actually complete. I would call that's out of the pipeline. We can call that one successful. I believe that's 56 or 65, I can't remember right now. That one was developed by Tom Kemper Company, and he is a great developer. He was at the Housing Summit and actually talked about that project there. And you know, what I will say about that one is he got that project done throughout the transitions in the housing authority. So he started with the previous director, the whole mess, and what happened with the vouchers, and nonetheless, he got the project done. And if you heard his story at the housing summit, I mean, that's the kind of like developer gumption that it takes to get a housing project done. But I would say it's now one of the nicest ones in Noah's portfolio by far. It's well managed and has been redeveloped, so it's a model that can serve well. And frankly shows how to overcome challenges to land in places like Tillamook. I mean, he had environmental challenges and, you know, city of Tillamook and actually Tillamook County, I think, shows leadership in promoting this. And so shows what can happen when you have a county or city behind you.
And the, you know, resources of having TJ and others on that front, Aaron working on that.
Exactly.
Well, I just want to say that's why we appreciate what Alyssa's brought to the table, because the housing authority is doing, I mean, there's a lot of activity, and they're gonna be a resource as we move forward. And it's so nice to pick up the phone and talk to Alyssa and just talk about how we can move things forward. And so that's why the county invested in Noah, and it's just gratifying to see all the work you guys are doing in such a short amount of time. So thank you.
It is. I mean, that's, you know, that I didn't schedule that much time for this, so.
Sorry.
Fisher in Pacific City as well, and where it's at.
I don't know the status of that. See, that's the thing, Jeff, this could be a living thing.
Where's
We could add to it.
In Pacific City,
Oh, okay.
South, Tillamook County.
Yeah, we should add that one.
I think, I'll have to, I'm trying to look real quick in terms
That's
of.
not the Golden Eagle one.
23 apartments, but I just don't know where it's at right now, so.
And that's Pacific City though?
Right, but there's, Pacific City is not, is unincorporated, it's like,
Oh,
it's
okay.
an unincorporated community in Tillamook County. Did you know?
Okay. So next slide, please, there. And, I have rearranged the agenda just a little because I just want to briefly touch on that. You can go to the next, values, outcomes, and action. That's a phrase from Melissa actually on the phone, talking to her. She wants to do things, values, outcomes, and actions, and showing what they've done already since Alyssa's been here and all the activity. You know, I'm with Don that the capacity is, we talked about it in meeting 2 and 3 about building capacity. And that's also what I think this meeting is really what I'm wanting to talk about is how do we get, not just build that capacity, but sustain that capacity going forward. Because if you guys don't know, I accepted a position in Brevard, North Carolina, and will be leaving, and this may be my last meeting. I'm hoping I can make the next one, which would be the HUD one stop we'll be talking about. But if not, this may be my last in-person one at least. And so I won't be able to sustain it. You know, I hopefully will be able.
Just gonna slide.
Sounds like sad faces.
Didn't know about that.
Well, so, you know, I have spoken fairly openly about, you know, as my son's getting married in May back in Greenville, South Carolina. My family and my wife's family is from Athens and Atlanta, Georgia area. And so I knew the grandchildren would probably be pretty soon. So I've been thinking that I'm not gonna blame my wife, but I am blaming my wife. That, you know, I would be going back to the South fairly soon, but I didn't know it would be this soon. But anyhow, I will be taking that position. And so how do we transition this going forward? I mean, I know that this is doing great work. I mean, I think we're starting to see the results of this. And I think, you know, once we can get everyone here and start talking about really, you know, what we can do to build this organization, you know, it's, I think the natural transition is from not only Clatsop County help providing support to the housing authority, but also everyone at this table providing support. And how we do that, you know, how do we get to that point where we can help support the housing authority and Denise's, you know, that transition player as well with Crest and what they might, the role they might play if the housing authority can't play every role. And so those are the things, I want this talk about it somewhat today, but we'll also start talking about it in the upcoming meetings. But we had started, talking about originally about our mission, vision and plans. And, I transitioned to say, we can talk about it, either mission, vision, plans, values, outcomes, action, whatever you want to do. But I'm happy to make that transition because I want us all to have those same values and move that vision forward. If you can go to the next slide, that was the mission statement. I don't know if you guys know Seinfeld's night guy versus morning guy. So this is a little economic lesson for you today. So do you know what this, can you click on it, see if it plays?
It's mad.
Oh, okay, but it will play right after, right? Okay.
I never get enough sleep. I stay up late at night because I'm night guy. The night guy wants to stay up late. What about getting up after 5 hours sleep? Oh, that's morning guy's problem. My problem. I'm night guy. I stay up as late as I want. So you get up in the morning, you're exhausted, groggy. Oh, you're a night guy. Night guy always screws morning guy. There's nothing morning guy can do. The only morning guy can do is try and oversleep often enough so that day guy loses his job and night guy has no money to go out anymore.
So, what I wanted to talk about was that whatever we call this, we're talking about, what do we want to be in the future? And, Seinfeld makes fun of the night guy versus morning guy because you can't picture yourself, in the future. It's called, future proofing or whatever. And so, if whatever that vision we have, or whether we call this organization the Clatsop Regional Housing Task Force, but we've had a conversation with TJ from Tillamook County, and we see ourselves, like we've talked about with the North Coast Housing Summit, it's all a coastal issue that we're facing. And even more so, from my understanding, from what the state's new plans on how to fund housing, and it seems to be metro focused instead of also taking the rural areas and coastal areas into account. So I think we all have the same concerns. And so how we make this transition and may include Tillamook, it may include all of the Northwest Housing's territory. So next slide, please. And so I've often talked about the story arc, about that's how we can tell our story, and what are the challenges and where are we within this path of this story? And that's the same thing as this morning guy, night guy. What we're trying to do is picture ourselves in the future and to tell our story across the region. I think that's half of the issue. Okay, next up. And so if you keep clicking there, okay. And so the second economics lesson is this one study done by Dan Ariely at Duke. He gave three different groups of his classes students, and he gave them assignments to do these to set out deadlines. And so one of them could turn in all of their papers whenever they chose, but they had to pre-assign those times throughout their semester. The other did it on assigned deadlines by the professor. And then of course, the final is the student choice. Any one that he wanted, they can choose. And of course, they wait till the very last minute to do it. And so then, of course, then they grade. And how did this study come out? We all know the assigned deadlines was the one that scored the highest in the class. And so, that's why I think having these meetings and having us, just like we said, that one sheet showing how that pipeline comes through, they make such an important contribution of bringing us together, sharing our ideas. And, we learned from that with Coast Housing Summit. I learned some valuable things and some valuable connections, but I don't think we can let this kind of organization fall off, because I think it's key for us moving this organization of how we build, regionally, but also talk about, our next steps and what we've accomplished so far. So next one. And so one of the things I wanted to bring up, Tillamook County, this is their model. Okay, so they have different committees, those at the bottom, those yellow dots: legislative strategy, development strategy, outreach strategy, finance strategy, and executive strategy. And each one of those they're separate committees or commissions, and they're made up by people of the Tillamook County. And they are the ones that go about and do a lot of the work that we've kind of been doing along the way. So I wanted to bring that up because there are other models. There's ways that we might want to shape this going forward. And, you know, TJ can talk further about what each one of those roles are. But, you know, when we talk about these next steps, if you want to go to the final, what we're really talking, the way I've spoken about it so far is through foundational documents, because I really think that if you go to the next slide, we're looking at this kind of, you know, what's on the push and the pull, if you will. So how do we push things forward in certain things, whether it's through inclusionary housing kind of ordinances, those type of policies, or how do we pull? And that's really the other kind of economic way of looking at this, is that you can have the carrot or the stick. You can have the inclusionary housing policies that says you, and where you shape your zoning and subdivision ordinances that says you have to do 20% of your development has to be inclusionary housing. That's how you get that. Or you do it the other way, where we've done the construction excise tax one way, and this pool of money then develops, or you have a bond, or you go out and pool of money and you pull projects through that. And that's what Tillamook County, you know, what they did is they took the short-term rental fees, and they took a percentage of the short-term rental fees, and that's how they set up their program. And they have just now recently done their first round of how they're going to distribute those funds. And so, do you remember how many units they did with that, Alyssa?
It's 8 projects.
It's 8 projects. I
I
couldn't
don't
remember.
remember the number. of
Yeah.
units.
I'm thinking it was like 80 some odd. I'm not sure.
It was like, it's like only like half $500,000 though, right?
Yeah, so it's only on five,
Like,
yeah,
last
500,000.
8
money.
projects and I think 700,000.
700, right?
So anyhow, so that, you know, I think that those are the kind of things I've been trying to frame in these foundational documents moving forward. So next slide, please. So if you go through this, I had 3 kind of foundational documents I wanted to talk about. But basically, an intergovernmental agreement, the program guidelines, and the deed restriction is a way of thinking about it at the policy level, the program level, and the project level. And really, they're the same, pretty much same document, the same structure with each one of those. And so that's how I first in the, I think it was meeting 2, I gave out the deed restriction example. The second one was a program guideline, and then the intergovernmental agreement is the latest one. So if you go to the next slide there. So in that, our first one that we talked about was the development agreement, where we got for the CLARC one, we signed a deed restriction on those units, and we got 8 affordable units at 80 AMI, and the utilities were not included. We gave building permit fees and waived the SDCs on those, and prohibited any short-term rentals in those units. So next up, and so, you know, basically what we're doing, I think number of units, you know, so at that deed restriction level, it's the number of units and you know, what's the AMI of those units, the length of that, the terms, you know, whether, I think it's 30 years now, they're saying most of those Colorado ones that we spoke with and those mountain town communities are saying in perpetuity on theirs. Incentives, what incentives can we give? And that's that pool of money of what, or SDCs and waiving fees, what can we give? And then the prohibitions, what don't we want to allow in these? And then the compliance and enforcement. One of the key things, we just had a project come forward, and that's the other thing I wanted to talk about on that list of projects that we had up there showing in the pipeline. Cannon Beach doesn't have any. We, you know, we're the ones that are without any projects in our jurisdiction, but we have the funds. We've got these construction excise tax. Another reason why we want to be partners in this is because we want to be able to build units, whether it's in the unincorporated county or in one of the other jurisdictions, and we want to be able to contribute to that. But one of the things that we came up recently in a proposal for the city of Cannon Beach for affordable housing was there in the development agreement on that, they did not feel had enough teeth in if they pulled out or if they did not comply with the agreement. So that is another important point, I think, that we'll have to drill down on when we go through these documents. So the next one. And so these, the other one is the guidelines. And so that's the one I've printed out today and put on your, each one on your agenda underneath your agenda. And I kind of want to focus on this just today because I really think if you guys are wanting to take a next step as regionally, I'm a middle out kind of guy, is that the guidelines are often the best way for the kind of the communities to come around and say, these are the terms that are important to us when we build these programs. And this was drafted to go before our city council in January. Because of the agenda delay right now, I don't see it getting there to probably March at some point. But what we're looking at doing is we have those funds, like I said, that we're collecting from construction excise tax. So how are we collecting funds? That's what this document says. What makes a project eligible for funding? What keeps a project compliant and affordable? What happens if they aren't? And what's the process that person, that developer needs to go through? And that's what I've tried to do in this, but I want you to know that the little cheat sheet at the back is really what it boils down to. And so when we talked about mapping assets and all of that throughout the county, this can be a guideline for exactly where we want to go as a community. Is if there's pushback about where you're putting your affordable and workforce housing, it's not in infrastructure, it's not in the appropriate places. Well, this is how you score those things, and that's what you write into your guidelines to give incentives to where you want those to go. And that's why you do these documents. But you also do these documents at the same time that we're putting together, and you'll see references in this if you read through it, in ordinances. So we're putting together ordinances for workforce housing affordable units. And so that we're building in incentives through our public benefits development. So if somebody's going to be doing housing, they can do a public benefits housing and get density bonuses with that. But some of that would then fund these kind of workforce housing units. So we're trying to do this at our local level, but this is what I wanted to propose is, this can also be the model for a regional kind of organization to do with guidelines. Very similar to some of the Mountain Town community guidelines that you'll see if you go out there and look at their websites. And this is how they run their programs. But often what it gets back to is who administers this and how does it move forward? And that's why I think it goes hand in hand with building up a regional housing authority, or at least those organizations and that technical capacity that can help pull these projects together for a region.
Jeff, can I jump in real quick?
Yeah.
I'm just really struck looking at particularly the Cannon Beach one, how much you have spoken to the conditions and sort of the aspirations of Cannon Beach. Like, what are the issues that people are dealing with here? How do they play out in the type of development you see? And, just in the little bit I know about differences in some of the other cities and counties around here, I'm not sure that, Seaside would want exactly the same thing, or Warrenton would want exactly the same thing, because each of you kind of has a different set of local conditions that you're trying to solve for. And this actually shows how local it actually needs to be, how even site specific, project specific. So it's a really interesting question between how do you make a regional umbrella that everybody buys into, the values level, if you will.
Right.
Versus the, you know, how this might be implemented in each of the jurisdictions.
Yeah.
To meet their own policies, plans, goals, hopes, dreams, deals, opportunities, challenges. And so I look at this and I'm like, I don't know, if I was Jeff, I wouldn't be like, no, I'm not signing on to a regional set of restrictions when I got my own problems in Seaside.
You bet.
But the idea of, there is a commonality here of, hey, we want to make housing as easy as possible to build. We want to bring as many levers to the table as we had. Like, I thought Don's point was really good. Like, there's only so many tools in the toolbox. So maybe that's the value. Bring all the tools to the table that we can, like you're laying out, leverage them to the best of our ability. You know, remove barriers such as XYZ, and then let each city figure out, I mean, you're all doing it in your own different ways.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's what I'm struck by is
Yeah.
you can't do top down without doing bottom up.
I agree, and that's why this is what I often call the middle document of the three, and if you go to the next one. That's the scoring sheet, just to show the different scoring things. What I've done with that is to kind of look at the, you know, the affordability and subsidy is how it starts out. Then you get into the affordability and the length of the terms of that, and then the proximity to infrastructure. Next up are the efficiencies of the units, and then within education, workforce, kind of proximity type of things, and then also deductions for within certain kind of sensitive lands and things like that, and then bonus points for other things. But it's just a way of kind of guiding the conversation for my jurisdiction. So then if you go to the next one.
Jeff, I had just a question on the deduction.
Yeah.
Curiosity. When you talk about the footprint, are you talking development footprint, building footprint, or total project size?
Let me see. So on which one is this one?
It's on your Cannon Beach.
On the
guidelines, the very
It's on the last
your
page,
deduction.
very bottom.
Yeah. So I'm thinking that is project, I think it's probably footprint. I'm not sure. I haven't thought through the entire thing yet. This is just kind of the basic model, but yeah. Yeah, where I say footprint, yeah, I'm saying building area, so.
Jeff, has your council made any comments or determination on whether some of those funds can be used outside of Cannon Beach to apply to housing projects that are nearby that would service Cannon Beach workforce, but not necessarily within the city of Cannon Beach?
Yes, and so that's the key point, and that's why I wanted to bring up the IGA, because like Alyssa said, I see this currently, at least from my perspective, and why I'm moving forward with Cannon Beach, is that this is a local thing. But the thing that would bring us at least together from a overall perspective is this intergovernmental agreement. And if you click on the next kind of thing, yeah, so it's establishment of authority, powers of the authority, administrative provisions, sources of revenue. So in that, we have had that discussion, and we've already kind of, because of the Arch Cape thing, and we said, yes, we were open to doing that. And so this is where I would say that the region comes forward so that, Henry, as brought up before, we don't really want what's Portland's metro thing. We don't want there to be metro, right? Which I love Henry saying it.
What's metro? I don't know what that means.
Yeah, Don, I have no idea.
And so, I'm not seeing that. I don't see that currently. I don't, maybe ever, but what I'm saying is that we do have to have just what you said, Jeff. We have to have some understanding, at least, that our officials we want projects built for our workforce wherever it makes the best sense. And that's where this agreement would say, these are the funding sources where that would come from. And hopefully we can build those funding sources, and that's part of also the discussion that we have with this. But, I want someone who has a project and wants to do it in, say, Warrington, or wants to do it in the unincorporated county on some surplus land or something, to have some kind of guarantee that our community supports that and will give our funds towards that pool of funds. So
Jeff, can I just say, this is an intergovernmental agreement establishing a regional housing authority.
Yeah,
We have that, I'm here.
yeah.
It's a 3-county housing authority. I literally, for this closing deal that I'm doing, I could show you all the resolutions that all the counties passed in whatever 1983 to establish us. So we probably don't need another housing authority intergovernmental agreement.
One question I had on that. So do you know, because we had this come up the other day, for affordable housing, which you guys can do, can you do workforce housing as well under the Northwest Housing Authority umbrella? Or
You
does that
know,
have to be enough?
Our property in Seaside Clatsop Shores is a market rate property.
Okay, so you're good.
Whether or not that's what our board wants to focus our wheelhouse on is another question that we now have to ask.
Yeah,
But I think what we see ourselves more as we were talking about in the pipeline conversation, recognizing that we can't do it all ourselves and that it takes a bunch of partners and frankly, other ideas. And other models, right? Like what Walt is doing in Astoria is great,
yeah,
but we could never do that. So no, we wouldn't want to do it all, but I think what you're getting at, this idea of having a regional coordination where we're all putting our resources together, we're all coordinating, we're all learning from each other, but without compelling, like, I did work at Metro, so it's kind of funny. What you don't want to do is like drag each other down with each other's baggage, right? You don't want Seaside to make it harder for Cannon Beach and vice versa. You want to like, hey, this worked for you, this could work for me. But you think about the struggles of Warrenton and Henry, like he's got his own thing going on. And so I guess that, maybe we don't start with an IGA for housing development. We start with like, hey, it's an MOU between cities and counties, and we all agree that we have the same set of values around affordable housing. We want as much as we can. We want to partner as many ways as we can. We want to bring our fair share of resources from the state to the coast.
yeah.
We want to take private developers and enable them to think about ways to, perpetuate affordability. Like I could rattle off a billion values here, you guys. I could literally go around the room and we could all whiteboard this thing right now. And so maybe
That's
that's
next meeting.
and okay, perfect. Great, see you there. But like, you're building this, you're building the whole building, and I think, what we've been talking about is like, what's the foundation?
Yeah.
And then we can build a building on it.
You bet.
And so just this conversation, I would say, is the foundation, the fact that we're all here.
Right.
And so I guess, I don't think we need to, this would be a hard lift
Yeah,
for where we're at now.
Yeah.
But maybe we need to take some
take the steps.
small steps
Yeah.
toward that, so.
I agree.
That's
Well, and we have a housing authority and we have a COG
Right.
that the county and all of the cities are already members of. And so I don't know what a structure would look like, but we already have intergovernmental structures where, there's a COG that meets, that has representation from all local jurisdictions. There's a housing authority. There's structures already here in the region. Crest has no technical expertise in housing, but it's something if it was useful and the jurisdiction said, we want Crest to assist in some way, like we could go out and start looking for money. Like, so there's some space there.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting thing, right? Like the structures exist.
Yeah,
And I think Don's brought this up, right? It's the people, right, Jeff? You brought it up, right?
Yeah.
The reason we're here now is because of you.
yeah,
Right? And the reason I'm doing half my projects right now, the reason I hired Shannon is because of Don. And so there is this, it's not, we don't need to make another government, right? That's the last thing any of us need. What we need is to like take what we have and make it relevant, make it robust, make it effective.
yeah.
And I think that's the like meat of this conversation. Like, what do we want to do with our time to make ourselves better at this?
Yeah, and where does that happen? Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really good point.
So, next one. So, on that note, we've been in conversation with Tara Sullivan and Brian, what's Brian's last name?
Guinea.
From HUD's Portland field office. And this is a HUD one-stop preparation sheet that they give to the communities. But really, in this conversation, HUD wants to pull together a one-stop for Clatsop County and Tillamook County. And they want us to bring 2 or 3 of our best projects or most promising projects to this one shop but they want to open it up to all, as Gail was the one who brought up the idea, why don't we just have a fair? What'd you call it? Wasn't it fair?
I think we just need a place, I think, even for projects that aren't in the pipeline, but
Yeah,
up to the
ideas.
starting line,
Yeah.
just to understand what resources are available for them.
Yeah.
which are gonna be paper.
And so I had that conversation with her, changing the kind of focus from, they first approach us about bringing us 3 projects that were pretty much ready to go. Shovel ready is what I think,
And what was I gonna do with those? Throw money at us?
Well, yeah, somewhat. Tell us, what are the funding sources out there? Or what could they help to fill these gaps? And so now they want to do this, which is to bring 2 or 3 projects. And so we're gonna bring 2 or 3, if we can kind of brainstorm what 2 or 3 might be out there, that we bring them. And then whoever we want to call to contact, different developers or others that are working on projects. But they don't have to be shovel ready. There's just that developer would just give a short presentation, and they would have a brainstorming among the state and federal agencies that they're bringing to this one stop. And then they would like, what are your major barriers and what are the gaps that still need to be filled? So it sounded like Gail said, it doesn't, even at those early ones, what are the barriers some of these face? And then the funding gaps that they see into the future, but maybe some that are already kind of in shape, like what's the common ones or whatever that still had some gaps to close or whatever. Yeah, some of these others might also be, want to be at this thing because all those agencies and all those brains will be there to storm. And then invite development community and the housing partners. And so I've started writing down some of the ones that from Melissa and others that have spoke today about some of the partners and some of these that have been built or are being built in the pipeline. But, we need to reach out to these folks over the next month. And can you go to the next one? Yeah, and so they gave us a timeline date. And so we were thinking that from today's meeting, we would do this HUD one stop in February. And then that March one would likely be Alyssa's with the whiteboard and the values and building that foundation or whatever, but then starting to go into more of what we talk about building this, organization. So then next up. So, so the one stop would be on our normal meeting is Wednesday, or would be projected to be Wednesday, February 22nd. But they have asked if we could do it Thursday, February 23rd from 11 to 1 p.m. And since we would be doing this with Tillamook, they're going to also have 2 or 3 there. We were thinking that we might do it in Manzanita. And unless someone has difficulty with that or, so yeah, I'm thinking, this sounds very promising. I think it's another, we talk about also, was it Alyssa, you said about, making the coastal, in other words, getting on state and federal radar as well, keeping that as part of this discussion. And they'll have everyone from the USDA and all the different agencies that are part of the game, DQ, and so does anyone, I'm thinking, Chet, your project, if you want that to be one of the projects, are there
other ones? But
No, I think that'd be a great one to let HUD troubleshoot.
yes, exactly.
Yeah, are there other projects out there though that others know? I know Jeff and I've had conversations about possible one, even if it is just a hypothetical one that you want to, and I've asked her specifically that, does it have to be, to where someone's, ready to go, or can we just give you those kind of things so that they might start thinking about that?
I have one that has a funding gap that might be benefit from this, but I don't know if they're ready to go public yet, 'cause we haven't gone through the
Okay.
conditional use process quite yet.
Okay,
But it's certainly something I can reach out to the applicant.
yeah,
And I think I'm just having a meeting with them anyway this week to see if this is something they're interested in, because if it'll help fill a funding gap, that might be,
yeah.
might be important, might be a good one. That's good.
Yeah. And, I don't know if anybody else knows of any others.
What about that one that Clatsop Behavioral Health is working on, right next to the KFC in Astoria?
Have you heard anything about that one, Greg? I don't know.
Only thing I've heard, last I heard from, Amy Baker was, they were still having to work with KFC and that they hadn't jumped in there.
Yeah. That's what.
See,
I
that's
heard,
why it's
so.
like, why not let the feds come in and be like, hey,
Yeah.
how does paying attention to this project, like, I just wonder if that would help to come, I don't know.
Yeah, for those who don't know, this, she spoke to this at the, Housing Summit.
Yeah.
There's a property that they're wanting to acquire in Uniontown. And, through the land transactions, the owner of KFC sold the property to someone else that held a deed restriction that said that if whatever's gonna be built next to KFC, the owner of the KFC has to agree to. And so it's a covenant, the CCNR covenant. And so to be able to make that happen, the owner of KFC has to sign off saying that they're okay with that land use.
Like Colonel Sanders.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
mean, you would think,
Right on your property value.
business development, look all the fried chicken you're gonna sell.
yeah, and,
It's a tough, I brought it up, it's a tough one that has issues, and so
Yeah.
if the idea, I personally am not convinced that these guys are gonna come up with a bunch of money, because I love these guys at HUD, they're the government affairs side, they're not the financing side. I think it's what you said, which is we get on their radar, we show them that we have capacity, we show them that we're moving things forward, that we're overcoming barriers and addressing complicated things. They're not writing us a check, and so I wonder which projects might make sense to get on their attention.
Yeah.
And so one where we're trying to help behavioral health, and this is a really weird land use issue. This seems like one that might be worth it, but I don't know if there's others that are.
yeah, I spoke with Jay about that one, Denise, the one that he's, or at least that area. And so maybe there's something with Jay.
The land bank would be, yeah.
Yeah,
Right, and we've even talked about other iterations of that through, rather than a land bank, doing a UGB swap.
Oh.
The LCD is becoming more comfortable with the concept of donut holes inside of UGBs, where you take something out, so.
UGB land swap, that's the thing now.
Oh, I've got, yeah, I have one in Vernonia that's about to hit, and I'm down in Newport, I mean, it's still all over the place, so.
good. Well, who would I reach out to for the KFC one?
It'd be Amy.
Amy Baker.
Okay. And I'll meet with Jay tomorrow, so I can talk with him a little bit tomorrow, and then, I can also give Meg a call and just see if there's anything in.
I mean, Copeland would be bad either.
Copeland would be a good one too.
Yeah, because they're still needing, right?
They haven't funded yet.
That would be a good one to get on the Fed's radar. too.
Okay,
Cause they've got some funding, there's been some discussion about urban renewal, but to be able to put urban renewal towards that project, there would have to be an expansion of the urban renewal district, and there's just a sliver of land that's available, it's like less than an acre that can be added to that urban renewal district, so,
Okay.
and that's, last time I talked to Paul Benoit before he left, he said that was still on the table, but nothing to move forward with it.
okay, and so, I'll do that, and so we're gonna go with the Thursday date, and we'll try to set it up for Manzanita, and we'll get that out as soon as possible, for that meeting, and do this, one-stop fair. But if you guys can also either get me, I've got, the ones I've written down with Kingfisher, Care Oregon, some of the people that might want to be here or be at these next meetings to reach out to all these other players that I've written down, and try to get them at that event at least, and then we'll hopefully can carry that momentum over to the next meeting as well and start talking about what Alyssa was talking about. But I will,
So you're gonna be here through the summer then?
Yeah, might as well stay on the coast until the summertime.
Yeah. Yeah, so, that's kind of, I think, where I see this going, and I don't know how we had talked about, what, monthly meetings, how you guys want to organize going forward from here on out, but, or at least who's part of these meetings, going forward. I think those are also part of the next discussion as well.
I mean, what are you guys gonna do without Jeff? I don't have a lot of capacity, but I could convene the meeting. I could not make a nice PowerPoint like you did.
And so, yeah, we have Denise, so that's the other thing as well.
I can
So
help.
Yeah.
I wanted to
We know.
let everyone know also that, Cannon Beach has committed at least to also, supporting Crest in this effort for, at least through July. And so, and we will be talking, Denise and I will be meeting with Bruce and then talking about that future as well, because we want to, like I said, help this, make this work as well. So, and, I want to, keep this going, and, even if I'm, take a lunch hour there in Brevard as well, I'll probably be zooming in on some of this as well. So as many as I can do.
Or we can take a field trip.
There you go. Yeah. Any other thoughts or, comments going for the next meeting or? And if anyone can think, or they do have other, one-stop ideas or other projects, please let me know before that. And because I think they're really wanting to have the 2 or 3 projects, sometimes next week. And so I'll try to reach out to these others in the next week and see if I can get at least those projects. And Jeff, if you find out something, just let me know. Okay. All right. Anything else, anybody?
Besides, big thanks to you.
Oh,
So,
thank you.
yeah, love you, yeah.
Yeah, thanks for everyone for being part of this. I think we can, it's so much is happening, and I mean, just since we started getting together, so I think it's moving in the right direction. So
Jeff, I wanted to say thank you as well. If I was there in person for your last in-person meeting, man, I'd give you a big high five. So thanks for doing what you're doing.
well, thank you.
Aside from this, what are you most proud about accomplishing before you leave?
Before I leave, I was just happy to get the first transportation system plan for Cannon Beach done, as that's another big thing that I was happy to do, because we had tried for a number of years to get that, and we weren't successful. And then I think just some of the things that our council is trying to do and moving forward on, whether it's the school project, that city hall project, some of those things as well. And so I think in our code audit update, we've got a code which really hasn't been updated since the 80s or 90s. So that's another big thing. So.
How large of a community are you going to?
I'm going to I think Transylvania County is about 30,000 population wise, and I'll be working for the county now, so I'll be calling Guilford. But I've worked for 2 other counties. Yeah, I've been going back and forth, working in cities and counties and others, but it's Transylvania County. So the Adams family in Transylvania County, I think just makes sense.
You're gonna have to like change your wardrobe a little bit.
Yes, I go much better with Uncle Fester, I think. I am looking forward to being back there, and I think they've got, talk about challenges. They don't have zoning, countywide zoning. They just have a small area around Pisgah National Forest, which is the cradle of the American Forestry Service. and there's a little pocket of zoning there, and then the rest of the county, it's one of the, I think there's only 20 of 100 counties that don't have zoning or less now, maybe 12. And so I think that was one of the other reasons they hired me, is that they think that I might be able to bring that.
Doesn't sound like a challenge or anything.
Yeah.
I mean, just put some colors on a map. How hard can it be?
Yeah. So, yeah, it's a, booming area, of course. Asheville is 45 minutes away, Greenville's an hour away, and it's only an hour and a half, 2 hours to Atlanta and that area, so.
And housing is available.
It's easier than here is all I can say, but it's not that easy,
But you can build anything you want.
Exactly. Yes, anywhere you. That's what
And so later, right?
Yeah.
Good point. Yeah. Well, thank you all.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, and Jeff, one more thing before you go. Thank you very much, Denise, for all your work in this. And Denise and Crest with the city of Deer Heart now has an IGA, and Garrett Phillips, who's also on this call, is going to be helping Deer Heart moving forward with planning efforts. So wanted to welcome him to the team, from our standpoint as well. And thank Denise for her work on helping make that happen.
Yeah, and thanks for bringing that up, Chad, because same with us. We're really supportive of Crest and the work they're doing. And Garrett will be my neighbor because he's in Nashville. So
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, Jeff, they need to get together and maybe we'll have a Zoom. They can be in North Carolina. We'll be here.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So he's working on